Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Broncos country, sit down, because you were lied to, and you have every single right to be furious about it. I am fired up. I mean genuinely, throw the remote across the room fired up, because for weeks I have been the lone voice screaming into the void that these narratives, these doom and gloom tweets, this entire manufactured soap opera made absolutely zero sense. I was swimming upstream while an entire ecosystem of clickbait merchants tried to convince you that the sky was falling on Denver. And there was a moment, I'll admit it, where I sat back and thought, wait, am I the crazy one here? Am I missing something? Am I just an idiot who doesn't understand football? And then I remembered something my old football coach used to tell me back when I was grinding it out on Friday nights under the lights, chasing a state title that always felt just out of reach. The loudest voice in the room isn't always the smartest one, but the guy who actually watches the tape usually is. So no, I'm not the dummy here. And Broncos country, neither are you. If this video does anything today, I hope it changes who you trust for your Denver Broncos information going forward. Because what I'm about to show you is going to make your blood boil. Before we get into the receipts, and trust me, I've got a mountain of them, hit that like button and subscribe right now, because this channel is about giving you the truth without the theatrics. Even when the truth is that everyone else was doing theatrics. Okay, let's dive in. Here is the headline that changes absolutely everything for this football team. Sean Payton did not lie. General Manager George Patone did not lie. Bo Nix did not lie. And I did not lie when I told you, week after week, that this young quarterback was going to be just fine. Because he is fine. He is more than fine. Bo Nix has been dropping videos of himself moving, cutting, and looking as fluid as a river in springtime. His ankle, the same ankle that half the Denver media turned into a full-blown murder mystery, looks rock solid. This man looks chiseled, he looks recharged, and he looks absolutely ready to go to war this season. When a reporter finally asked him point-blank at a press conference whether he had any lingering worries about that ankle, Nix basically laughed it off and said his only worry these days is for everybody else on the field, because his ankle has genuinely never felt better heading into a training camp. And he meant every word of it. This is a guy who has dealt with some nagging ankle issues throughout his career, and for him to say this is the best he's felt going into camp, that should have been the entire story. That should have been the headline. Instead, it became a footnote buried under an avalanche of speculation. And I have the receipts to prove exactly how far off the rails this got. When that video of Nix moving around dropped, it spread like wildfire through the building. Backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham liked it. Teammates and friends shared it everywhere. And here's something you don't know. I had multiple players connected to this organization reach out to me personally over the offseason unprompted, just to confirm that Nix was completely full go, cleared, ready. No restrictions. These were guys inside the walls telling me directly that anyone claiming otherwise was doing it for engagement, doing it for clicks, doing it because outrage travels faster than truth ever will. And look, I'm not trying to blast anybody by name and turn this into a personal vendetta, but when you have the head coach, the general manager, and the player himself all saying the same thing, that should be the end of the conversation. That should be the period at the end of the sentence. You believe them. And if it turns out down the road that they were lying to your face, then fine, hold them accountable, run them out of town on a rail. But until that happens, you extend basic trust. Instead, an entire conspiracy industry sprang up around what was, in reality, a simple cleanup procedure. A tune-up. A routine maintenance appointment that got twisted into a 5-alarm fire. I pulled up article after article, and it is almost comedic at this point how far some of these outlets stretch the truth. One piece straight up accused the organization of gaslighting its own fan base, suggesting the front office was somehow structurally incapable of telling the truth about an injury. Think about how insane that sounds when you say it out loud. Then the rumor mill kicked into overdrive with whispers that Nix and Sean Payton had some kind of secret falling out, that the two of them couldn't stand each other behind closed doors, and that this tension might even torpedo a long-term contract extension or Payton's own future with the franchise. And then, almost as if the universe wanted to make these rumor mongers look as foolish as possible, it came out that Nix and Payton had gone out to dinner together, just the two of them, right around the time the team traded for wide receiver Jalen Waddle. Two guys who supposedly hated each other, sharing a meal and planning the offense together. There was no beef. There never was any beef. It was manufactured from thin air because negative stories travel further than positive ones. And that's not opinion, that's basically a law of media physics at this point. If it bleeds, it leads. A scary headline about a franchise quarterback's ankle will always outclick a boring headline about a guy who's healthy and having a normal offseason. So when someone tells you they chase positive stories because positivity gets more engagement, they are either lying to you or they don't understand their own business, because the data says the opposite every single time. I went through the archives and pulled up outlet after outlet running with some version of the same doom narrative, questioning whether the Broncos were hiding something serious. And here's the part that really gets under my skin. Even some of the shows and personalities I genuinely respect, ones I've listened to for years, got swept up in it. One host I have a lot of time for went on air and said something that stuck with me, essentially admitting he felt like he was being gaslit because nothing about the situation had actually changed. Yet the temperature of the conversation kept rising anyway. And look, I get it. When a wave of negative coverage builds that much momentum, even smart, well-intentioned broadcasters start second-guessing what they know to be true. But nothing was actually wrong. Nix had a cleanup procedure. It happened, by all accounts, because he was ahead of schedule in his recovery, not behind it. He is fully cleared and ready for training camp, which starts in just a couple of weeks. The idea that this was some hidden catastrophe is frankly absurd when you lay out the timeline. I watched the local sports radio circuit essentially turn this into a week-long special report. Big-name hosts on some of the biggest platforms in the market were asking on air what exactly the Broncos were trying to hide with this injury. National reporters picked it up too, framing it as a legitimate concern that could affect Nix's next contract negotiation, treating a routine medical procedure like it belonged on the injury report of a player who might miss the season. And then things got even more ridiculous. Fake images started circulating, images that had nothing to do with Nix at all, misattributed photos from a completely different player's medical history being passed around as supposed proof of some horrific, career-altering injury. People were out here sharing pictures that weren't even the right athlete and using them to declare that this ankle would never be the same. It would be funny if it wasn't so damaging to the actual people involved. And then, as if the conspiracy needed one more layer, a segment of the internet started suggesting the injury hadn't even happened in the first place. That the entire thing was some kind of smokescreen dreamed up by the coaching staff. None of it was true. Not one word of it held up under any scrutiny whatsoever. Here's what I think is actually going on, and I want you to sit with this for a second, because I think it explains almost every off-season conspiracy that swirls around a good football team. When you're a franchise on the rise, when you're the team that just won 14 games and has the whole league looking over its shoulder, everybody wants to be the one who knocks the crown off your head. Everybody wants to be first with the story that humbles you. And I think part of the reason this particular rumor mill spun out of control is that this coaching staff runs an incredibly tight ship. Very little actual information leaks out of that building. And when reporters and content creators are starving for real news, some of them will take a single data point, a missed practice here, a vague quote there, and build an entire narrative skyscraper on top of it. Maybe, and I say this with respect, this whole saga teaches the organization that a little more transparency goes a long way towards starving these rumors before they can spread. Because I will tell you, this whole cycle was maddening to watch play out in real time. but I feel genuinely good knowing where things actually stand. Yes, Nix missed a few voluntary spring practices. You know who else missed practices this offseason? One of the top quarterbacks in the entire AFC missed time because he was traveling internationally to support his significant other's world tour. Guys around this league skip voluntary work all the time for all kinds of legitimate reasons, and nobody blinks. We went back through old quotes from some of the most respected quarterbacks in NFL history. Guys who have said for years that voluntary spring practices barely move the needle in terms of actual season outcomes. Even some of the outlets I trust the most for genuine, deep-cut Broncos coverage ran pieces suggesting the team was doing damage control after the fact on this ankle story. And look, I respect the hustle of everybody trying to cover this team, including folks who leaned into this angle. But in what universe is a guy being ahead of schedule on a cleanup procedure, then resting for a handful of voluntary practices, actually a story worth this much ink? It wasn't. It never was. And I think we can officially close the book on this chapter, but only if we use it as a lesson going forward. Because here's the truth, Broncos country. This is not going to be the last time the media takes a small, boring data point and inflates it into a full-blown crisis. As this team climbs higher, as the expectations grow bigger, the target on this franchise's back is only going to get larger, and outlets chasing clicks will keep taking their shots. My advice is simple. Listen to what Sean Payton says. Listen to what George Payton says. Trust the people who have actually earned it through their track record. And the moment they lie to you, the moment they get caught in an actual falsehood, that's when you stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. But until that day comes, and it hasn't come yet, they have more than earned our trust over these last several years. We were told Nix's doctors described him as good as new. We were told by Nix himself that he expects to be even better than before. We heard directly from the head coach that there was nothing to be concerned about. And I am simultaneously furious that this got blown so far out of proportion and deeply relieved that a routine cleanup procedure has finally, mercifully, been put to rest as the non-story it always was. And honestly, once you strip away all that manufactured drama, what you're left with should have Broncos country absolutely buzzing with excitement, because this offense is about to become an entirely different animal. You've got Bo Nix coming back from that so-called cleanup procedure looking sharper, more explosive, and more confident than ever. And now you're pairing him with a game-breaking wide receiver added via trade this offseason. A player who, once the ball is in his hands, turns into pure lightning in cleats. Sean Payton is famous for grinding through film every single week, dissecting every touchdown scored across the league and asking himself one simple question. Was that touchdown a product of the scheme? Or was it a product of the player? If it's pure scheme, he tends to move on, because there's not much transferable magic in it. But if it's the player, if it's raw talent turning a broken play into 6 points, that's when Payton leans in and studies it obsessively. Now imagine handing that offensive mind a player who fits squarely into that second category. A home run threat who can turn a 5-yard screen into a 60-yard sprint to the end zone. And on top of that, imagine a quarterback who is playing with an actual chip on his shoulder because half the internet spent the summer questioning whether his ankle would ever be the same, with strangers practically stopping him in public to ask if something's wrong with his leg. That kind of noise doesn't rattle a competitor like Nix, it fuels him. Add a dynamic new playmaker to a roster that already won 14 games a season ago, and you are looking at a team that could genuinely terrorize opposing defenses from week one. Now look, I know the criticism. I know there are people out there who think this whole channel is nothing but Kool-Aid, that I just parrot whatever the front office says and call it analysis. But here's the actual truth of it. All I do is listen closely to what Sean Payton says, cross-reference it with what I'm seeing on tape and hearing from people inside the building, and report back what I genuinely believe to be accurate. The second that stops being true, The second Peyton or this front office actually lies to my face in a way that gets exposed, I will be the very first person to admit I got it wrong and adjust accordingly. But that hasn't happened. Not once. Rewind 2 years back to the darkest days of this franchise, back when the quarterback situation was an absolute disaster and this team got humiliated on national television in a blowout loss that made the entire league point and laugh. I started building an audience around this team in exactly that moment, telling anyone who would listen that this coaching staff hadn't quit, that Sean Payton was still one of the sharpest offensive minds in football, and that the foundation was being rebuilt the right way even when the record didn't show it. That team nearly snuck into the playoffs against all odds. The very next year, I said this rookie quarterback was going to be the starter from day one, not some project sitting on the bench for a month while the coaching staff figured things out. People told me I was out of my mind. Respected voices in this market insisted he wouldn't see the field until at least week 4. He started week 1. And I said that same rookie class would make the playoffs. I got laughed at for that too. It happened anyway. Then last season, Sean Payton stood in front of cameras and called this a legitimate Super Bowl contending roster, and I said I believed him, because he has never steered this fan base wrong. And let's be honest with ourselves for a second. If that ankle injury doesn't happen at the worst possible moment last season, this team is very likely playing in the Super Bowl. This offseason, Payton said his quarterback was going to be completely fine, nothing to worry about, and I simply repeated what he told me and got mocked for supposedly drinking the Kool-Aid all over again. But here's the bottom line. Broncos country. The day this coaching staff actually lies to us in a way that gets proven false, that's the day we hold them accountable and demand better. Until that day arrives, and based on every single piece of evidence in front of us, it is nowhere close to arriving, Sean Payton has earned the right to drive this train, and right now, that train is barreling straight toward a championship. This is a locomotive worth believing in. So here's what I need from you. If this video opened your eyes even a little bit to how much of the off-season coverage cycle is built on manufactured outrage rather than actual reporting, smash that like button so this reaches more Broncos fans who deserve the real story instead of the clickbait version. Drop a comment right now with your official win total prediction for this season. I want to see how bold Broncos country is really feeling after everything we just broke down. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it immediately, because this channel is going to be tracking every single storyline from training camp all the way through the playoffs, cutting through the noise so you don't have to. Let's ride this thing all the way to February. Broncos country, I'll see you.